Right, a bit of context for the list then. So it's a game changers list from the last 30 years because Runner's World's turning 30.
Whoa.
In September. Yeah. So we've been checking out some 1993 covers, and there are some amazing shots on there.
Genuinely fantastic. Some of the shoes are ultimately my favourite thing I've ever seen.
Very, very large, yeah.
Very large.
I actually realised that the early 90s kind of looks like the 80s.
Yeah.
I expected it to look more modern.
Futuristic.
Yeah.
The Paula cover is amazing. Paula Radcliffe cover.
Oh,
The
yeah.
cover lines were the most interesting.
Oh my God, what was it? Was it how much sex is too much sex?
Yeah, how much is too much?
Yeah, answered on page 22. Tune in for more. We'll tell you that next week.
I think it's conclusive proof that journalism has gone downhill.
Yeah.
Nowhere near as exciting now.
Yeah.
So in the 35th anniversary issue, we're going to do a larger list of game changers, but we were like, if we just do 12, 4 of us here, pick your top 3, and we can talk through them. Obviously, anyone listening who's got their own ideas about game changers, please let us know. podcast@runnersworld.co.uk.
Oh, nice.
Tell us
well
we're
done.
wrong.
Good little, well done. Segue.
Great segue.
So in magazine, the list is 30 for some reason. But, so 30 years and 30 game changers. We're not going to go through all 30 now because it would take forever.
Yeah.
So we've all chosen a few to highlight.
Exactly.
And this is just to make sure everyone understands, this isn't the definitive list. This is just we've picked a few.
Yeah.
And that's like where
we're going to get
with it.
complaints. You're always going to get
Well,
complaints.
people are bound to disagree.
But
and
we
we
have-
probably missed very important people.
Yeah.
But we have thought about it a bit, so hopefully we haven't.
Yeah, I was looking for, and I think the world's fastest marathoner hasn't made the list, which is somewhat controversial because he's pushed things along fairly,
Yeah, that's true.
in a major way.
God,
But
we
anyway,
should- When does this go to print?
yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Why don't one of us not start? We're always talking on this podcast, aren't we?
It's true. We kind of have to, otherwise it wouldn't exist. But let Jen,
I knew you were going to pick me.
always.
So shall I? I'll give you one of mine then.
Yeah.
Okay, so my first one is Josh Clark, who founded the Couch to 5K app. And his story is really interesting because he's actually not a PT or a sports scientist, he's a UX designer. But he basically had a really bad breakup in the 1990s, took up running, found it really hard and said it was painful and punishing. I think that was part of him going through this kind of breakup thing. And he was like, then he started really enjoying it, wrote a plan for his mum because he wanted to get her into running and kind of just share his passion for running with people. And that is what now is the Couch to 5K plan.
It's massive as well, isn't it? Like the amount of people that have gone through it.
Yeah, he doesn't know exactly how many people have downloaded it, but he estimates like tens of millions of people, and it's now endorsed by the NHS. So it basically follows the kind of walk-run method of like, you run for 60 seconds, you walk for 90 seconds. And then he said afterwards he just did some research and he was like, it turns out there was science to it. Yeah, he didn't really understand that before. He said it was just fortunate luck.
Wow, that's how I started running.
With the hot
Couch to 5K.
Really?
Yeah. It's amazing. Most people, when they have a bad breakup, like just get a bad haircut.
Yeah.
And he kind of revolutionised millions of people's lives.
Yeah.
Better, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some people really find out what the best flavour of ice cream is. But he really went the other way.
Yeah.
It's really interesting though what you say, because a few other people that we talk about on the list, they're not directly from running. So the reason why that was successful is because if he's from a UX point of view, he's got like apps in his head and he knows about how people might engage with something and he's got user experience. And that's like front and centre of how his brain has put it together. So you've got other people on the list as well where it's not like we've got people obviously who are just runners doing running or people involved in running who have changed it. But it's the outside influence, which is always...
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because I think it was like the early 2000s when the plan came out, and it was when the World Wide Web was gaining traction.
Oh yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
So
I'll never catch on.
he could sort of cleverly like put it in certain forums and like on social media when it was all taken off. So I think it was a kind of element of luck of that's when the internet was booming. But yeah, there was a bit of that, like his background, I assume.
Good inclusion, that Jen. Like that.
Thanks.
Yeah, really good.
As you say, like it's changed, or certainly probably alongside something called Parkrun. It's probably got people going.
Oh, a segue.
What a great segue. Because I think that Paul Sinton Hewitt has to be on this list because Parkrun's the biggest thing that's happened to recreational exercise in the last 30 years, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm saying that as a runner, but I think that's right. I think that's actually objectively true. Started really small at Bushy Park. There were 13 people when Parkrun started back in 2004. Most of them were St Hewitt's friends, I think. But it's now like a global phenomenon, as we know. He's won a CBE for services to grassroots sports participation. And I think when you're thinking about someone who has brought running to the masses, his name has to be very, very high on the list. Like, we've all done Parkrun.
I haven't.
Right.
You've not done one.
Wow.
Yeah,
protest.
No. Big wow.
Wow.
No, not a protest. It's just don't like.
So like getting up on a Saturday morning.
Yeah, exactly. I just can't bring myself to be that time dependent.
Yeah, but it's like
everyone but me.
It's ubiquitous now, isn't it? Like almost every major park's got a parkrun, and I think it's hard to overestimate that.
Oh, it's
And it's not just running. I mean, it's kind of bigger
Yeah.
than that, isn't it? Because it's not just that it's introduced an awful lot of people to running, which is great in itself. But it's, I mean, you think about the health implications. You know, I mean, I think it must have saved the NHS millions and millions of pounds.
Yes.
If you could put a figure on that, it would be just mind-blowing.
Yeah, and it's prescribed now, isn't it, by certain
Yeah,
GPs?
certain
Yeah.
doctors can do it. Yeah, not just for like exercise, but you know, anxiety and mental health things, and
Yeah.
also just like for loneliness.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
community
You know, 'cause,
benefit
yeah.
of seeing your mates on a Saturday morning, having
Making
something to
friends,
look forward
yeah.
to. Yeah,
100%. The community side and the movement, not necessarily running, but people
Yeah.
go and walk it, and absolutely
Yeah.
just having that like dedicated time every week, go and do a walk, see some people. Like that's the really
Yeah.
important bit of it, isn't
Yeah.
it? Like
Yeah.
that's why it's so important. But yeah, I think that's a good one.
think
No,
so.
no contesting that one.
Yeah, I think that's he's got to be on the list, isn't he? He's
Yeah.
got to be on the list.
Yeah.
We can all contest these, by the way. I think that's
be like-
gonna
yeah.
absolutely.
Terrible shout.
What, that guy? No. Yeah.
Kate.
Well, I mean, if you're going to contest one, you probably never heard of him, but there was this guy called Usain Bolt.
Oh, yeah.
You might have, you know, if you were really into athletics, you might have come across him. I mean, undeniably the biggest personality, the biggest figure in athletics for a generation. And I think the sport's still kind of struggling with the gap that he's left since his retirement.
Yeah.
I mean, just, you know, ridiculous levels of achievement. And he did it all with this kind of, I mean, it's all the kind of mythology, really, isn't it? This kind of idea that he barely put in any effort. He coasted across the line. He ain't nothing but chicken nuggets.
He was always slowing down just at the end because he was done. He was winning anyway. So,
yeah. And it's all obviously nonsense. The idea that he was just like, he just turned up and ran. He trained really hard, you know, sort of hours in the gym every day, or, you know, doing everything he was, you know, but he did have this, you know, just this phenomenal talent. And I think, you know, he's one of these kind of outliers that you just have to celebrate.
Yeah. You're right, and he had this kind of outsized personality, didn't he?
Yeah.
That made sprinting and running cool.
Cool,
I think,
yeah.
Yeah, almost like a kind of footballer kind of.
But that's what my point would be. He was way beyond the sport in terms of popularity and celebrity and importance. Like, and he's a Messi. He's like that kind of level of like revered
totally.
sport personality. Can go off and whatever career he was doing next, everyone would be like, yeah, great. I'm a musician now.
It's football, isn't it? Yeah.
It's actually great to see him play because he's actually not brilliant. It's like, wait a second.
Yeah. Well, ironically, despite being phenomenally successful, he probably still earned in his entire career about what Messi earns in a week.
That's probably true. Yeah.
No, he's definitely, and a personality. He definitely sort of changed or brought athletics more into like
The limelight?
but perhaps like modern era as well of like celebrity.
Yeah.
Like
Did you watch the film? Did anyone watch the Usain Bolt film? It came out about
No.
7 years ago, I think.
I think I did at the
Right.
time, yeah. I don't remember much about it.
It was good. You got a bit of an insight into like who he is as a man, basically.
Right.
But very much what you're saying, like he trained really hard.
Yeah.
He wasn't just sort of rocking up and being like, turns out I can run 9.56. Whatever.
Yeah, exactly that.
Right, Ben.
Right.
So, Jew.
So I'm just going to talk about two people, and they are the co-founders of Strava.
Okay.
And this is Mark Gainey and Michael Horvath. Horvath? Maybe. Now, these two were basically big business, right? They had like huge credentials in like setting up businesses and were like making loads of money. And sort of big business met fitness.
Love that.
You know? And they were sort of, I think, rowers, and they basically sort of worked on an app that was going to, I don't know, log things together and all this sort of stuff. Anyway, Strava.
For Rowan originally.
I think they were both
Okay.
Rowan, and then Strava
Yeah.
arrived. And I don't think...
Useless for rowing, isn't it?
Yeah. Terrible now. And not even on there. No.
What big failure it has been for rowing. Yeah.
But I can't think of a platform that has transformed engagement with sport and in general, but particularly running, like Strava has. And in terms of people getting into it, like disciples of Strava, like if it's not on Strava, it doesn't count. Like that's like
that's a
a
thing.
mindset.
Yeah,
That's a life
Yeah.
principle when it comes to sport. Like there's all of these sorts of stuff, and just it transcends sort of what everyone Strava art segments. There's like so many aspects to Strava and stuff, and then the way that people have then share their sport, interact with each other as a community on one platform, give each other kudos. The simple act of doing that has, like, and obviously everyone uses it maybe as a training diary or as a, the sort of traditional elements of running, normal running stuff, but just this huge, and also in the era of big data, Strava is absolutely at the forefront of how big data and running and all those sorts of, it's definitely like a sort of game changing. What those guys did. So
it's good for being nosy as well at what everybody else is doing. You're like, people say they're not training for something, and you're like,
now
Strava
your
says
Strava says otherwise.
now so when I said earlier we could contest these things, and this is my one, I'm not contesting the significance of it, but I think that everyone that's been mentioned so far, there's probably hard to put a negative on it. Now I'm going to suggest I'm going to suggest that Strava actually
has that potential.
Has a potential as a negative for the sport.
For that point of like comparing yourself to other people.
So I think it has absolutely opened up, and this is all on an individual basis, so it's very hard to blame Strava for this. But
because people could just leave if they don't want to.
Exactly, don't be on it. Exactly that. But at the same time, it's very much like the platform for overtraining, comparison,
competitive when you don't need to be, and
flagging everyone's efforts because you don't like it. There's a whole underside of it, and then you can kind of tie into people calling out cheating and using the data from these platforms, other tracking platforms obviously too, but like, I'm going to find that person who look at their splits and and so there is, I'm going to say, like,
there's negative potential.
Well, it's a social, it's essentially a social media platform app, isn't it? And all social media, as we know, has,
because people are terrible.
And yes, exactly. Yeah, that's not Strava. It's not Strava. It's people.
But that's it.
Cancel people.
But yeah, I think that on the whole, obviously, it's done massive amounts to get people running who probably wouldn't have run, and encourage people. It's particularly like in lockdowns or
those little mini challenges that certainly me and my local mates, when you couldn't run with anybody else, we'd all go, not all go at the same time obviously, but like we'd find a segment or something and everyone at various points would go and have a go at it.
That's good.
So you had a bit of a kind of internal competition. I said when there were no races, there was something you could do.
Do you think it's a running first program? Because when it started, I feel like Strava was probably more cycling.
100%. And they targeted.
Sort of
they actively went after running. Like as a because as a platform, they obviously they initially with segments and cycling and stuff, and running functions in a different way. You don't want to be like, chasing a segment in running is harder if it's a public space, whereas the road is different on bikes and stuff. So they had to sort of certainly rethink what they were doing, but I would say it's probably, I don't know, I haven't got the numbers, but they certainly maybe even more running than cycling.
I get that sense.
In 2022, from its inception, it had over 7 billion activities recorded on it.
Wow.
That's crazy.
That's a number of people on the planet, isn't it?
So, there's a lot of data.
There's a lot of data.
Yeah.
Wow.
I quite like Strava for when we do our group runs at lunch, comparing my heart rate afterwards to all of your heart rate, and then being like, actually, that explains why I was finding it so hard. So, it explains quite a lot.
Yeah, true. If you're looking for sort of insight into performance on a very sort of like me versus you level, not in a sort of detrimental to your own health way, but in a sort of just intrigued about fitness way. Never before has anyone been able to peek in and just look at a group of people. If you do a race and you look at who you ran with, you don't know them, but if you've got all your options, flybys or whatever open, you can go, that person, that one there.
You're huge on Strava. You're a face.
Yeah, the amount of kudoses you get after like easy runs, I'm like,
I get
she's
mocked from that
famous.
by my friends. Yeah.
30-minute easy run.
Yeah. No, I mean,
4,000 kudos.
one of my mates will literally, every time someone like, I get kudos for like jog to the gym. I mean, I'm Strava like or numbers obsessive in that I have to track everything, and that is for me. I don't think anyone else should or would care, but it means if I jog to the gym, which is like, I don't know, under a mile, that counts. I mean, it's for me, that's to stop myself overtraining, because otherwise I could just incrementally add all these things on. But then I get kudos for like 85 people will go like, yay, you jogged to the gym. And my friends are like, oh, for God's sake, people.
Also,
I want to take them away.
I like the how the naming of a run is now so tied in with the with your perception. Mega slow,
with
zone,
weights.
zone
Super
1,
easy,
super easy. Just to stipulate. Oh, not my day today is the classic. Like
Hungover 5K. Yeah.
But then you look at the heart rate and you know they're lying.
Yeah.
But I love the heart rate stuff. Like Jen's like an absolute expert. Like, it's got resting heart rate of around 60.
But have you not, because I confess to doing this, I have thought about what I'm going to call a run on the Strava while I'm doing the run. Which is really...
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, we need to move on from Strava. We've dallied too long.
Yeah.
Jen, you're up again.
Okay, so my second person is Sabrina Pace Humphreys, who is an ultra runner and the co-founder of Black Trail Runners, which is a community and campaigning group which is focused on making trail running accessible to a more diverse cross-section of people. So Sabrina grew up in the Cotswolds, where in the countryside at a really rural kind of market town where she just basically didn't see any other black people, and she was just made to feel like an outsider, and she experienced racism. And she's written a book all about that called Black Sheep, and it kind of documents her experiences of rural racism. And kind of off the back of that, she was inspired to set up Black Trail Runners in 2020 during COVID, which is all about tackling trail running's lack of diversity and kind of breaking down those barriers to participation. And yeah, her work's amazing. And they've the Black Trail Runners have just organised this amazing trail race called Black to the Trails, which was a massive success. And yeah, we had David Smith down there, one of our contributors, and he said the atmosphere was incredible. And I think, yeah, the numbers, I think it was 70% entries from black and minority ethnic people. I'll say that again. So the entries were 70% from black and minority ethnic people, compared to, I think they did a survey and the UK average of trail races was 0.7%. So it's amazing what that's done for inclusion.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, agreed. She's a real like force for good and like real force of nature, Sabrina. I think she's got like a real sense of mission and knows how to make stuff happen. So
yeah. And a great podcast guest.
Was a really good podcast guest.
She's also an amazing ultra runner as well. I think she's just done the Beyond the Ultimate Highland Ultra, which is a 1125k race. I think she's
done 100 mile, I think, along the Cotswold
Way. Yeah.
Summer Spine.
Hilly.
Yeah, and maybe she's done the Marathon des Sables. You know?
Oh yeah, she has. Yeah, I was reading about that earlier. And she's really big into the kind of the benefits of trail running for mental health and its kind of healing properties, and that's what she kind of wants to make accessible to everybody, not just kind of
not go and telling everyone to just go and run really far.
Yeah,
but like
just get out,
green spaces.
Yeah,
beneficial.
Yeah, really good. Okay, I'll go with. Let me go with a little-known trail runner called Kilian Jornet. He's the mountain goat, isn't he? In every sense, he is actually the Eliud Kipchoge of uphill running, I think.
I'm not sure he should be on this list because I'm not sure he's entirely human. I think he's like 30 best mountain goats in history or something.
Yeah, I think he almost does walk a higher path in people's imaginations. He's kind of like he's just the things he can do. Obviously, he's won like the UTMB 4 times, and he was the first person to go under 20 hours, which is a big deal for you. I mean, to put that in perspective, I think as a hike, it takes fit people about a week to do the UTMB, and it took him 20 hours, so it's quite quick.
He's run up Everest
twice in 1 week.
That's the thing that.
And I think that's it, Ben. Like it's not like he almost kind of not transcended competitive trail running, but he won everything, and he won it quite early as well. He even won the Western States, won the UTMB when he was 21, I think, and then he was like, I need something else. He was like, I'm going to run up the highest mountain in every continent, breaking various records as he did so. And he does all that, and he's but he's still really humble, and he's got this sort of reverence for the activity and the mountains. And I'm even going to forgive him for writing the world's worst running book, which is called A Run or Die, and it really is
pretty bad.
It's a horrendous read. But I got to meet him once, and it was bizarre. It was like in sort of some trendy pub in Shoreditch upstairs, and he's tiny. I mean, like, I'm not a big guy, but he's like he's must, I don't know what he must weigh, but probably weighs about 8 stone.
Wow.
But I was like, rarely have I looked so big and felt so small.
Yeah, I met him also weirdly in London, which is very much fish out of water territory for him. And I got a photo with him, and I look enormous.
Yeah, like a bouncer.
Towering over him. Yeah, exactly.
Is his wife or girlfriend an amazing ultra
Yeah,
runner?
Emily
Like, they're like a
Forsberg,
power couple.
Yeah, they've got children as well. Can you imagine?
Oh,
I mean,
they'll-
I want to know if you could put bets yet on those children winning the UTMB or something.
Well, we'll do
Yeah.
this in 60 years. The best after this 30 years. The next,
Yeah.
we'll be talking.
Yeah.
But together they're quite into kind of sustainable.
Yes.
They're doing a lot for sustainability as well, aren't they? Because they've got. I follow her on Instagram, and I'm a bit obsessed with her. Their property.
Yeah.
Which is kind of in the middle of nowhere, and they're trying to like be self-sustainable, so they're growing all their own
Amazing.
vegetables and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a very athletic version of the good life.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good. That is,
Yeah.
I like that.
No,
That's very good.
Love him. I think, just when a sort of generational talent in off-road running.
Yeah.
So, and
And
has changed what seems to be possible, I think.
It's like Usain Bolt had that kind of like freakishly talent that's just kind of one in a generation, and I think actually Kylian Jornet has got something similar. It's just that he's not a household name because ultra running, UTMB, while they are becoming hugely successful and popular and so on, they obviously don't have.
It's up there with. It's too niche.
You don't have your Olympics in which you are the eyes of the world are on you.
Yeah,
That's
exactly
true.
that.
That's true.
Right.
Kate, it's you.
Okay, so I'm gonna talk about Alison Felix. I mean, she I guess in some ways is equivalent to Usain Bolt. She won 11 Olympic medals of various sprints and relays and so on in I think 5 successive Olympics.
Yeah.
So I mean, like just the most incredible talent. But she's one of those people who's almost done even more since retirement than she did as an athlete, because she also had this when she was pregnant, firstly she was very, very ill and very dangerously ill, and so she talked about that, and she talks a lot now, and it's really unfortunately topical but very sad. But so Tori Bowie, who was a sprinter who died recently at a very, very young age, and tragically it turns out that she was pregnant and she died of what they think probably eclampsia alone at home. Now she was on the 4x100 meter Olympic gold medal 96, I think, with Alison Felix. And of the 4 women on that team, 3 of them, Tori Bowie tragically has died. Alison Felix and Tiana Bartoletta also had horrific experiences in pregnancy. And then these are, I think, we maybe think about problems with pregnancy as being something perhaps that fitness would help with. But clearly these are 4 of the fittest people on the planet. And it's just absolutely awful. But she's talked about the sort of black maternal healthcare crisis, and which is not just in America, it's here as well. And also she had this she wrote in the New York Times after she was pregnant about how basically Nike had not paid her essentially as a pregnant athlete, and so she raised that as an issue. And all of her kind of campaigning work and advocacy has been so important in kind of giving female athletes a voice, and also not even just specifically about these issues, important as they are, but just kind of as someone who shows athletes you don't have to just kind of be quiet and give sound bites. You are allowed to have a personality, you're allowed to have opinions, and you are allowed to talk about them, and you should, and that's important.
Yeah. That's,
Well,
agreed.
Done.
Done.
Possibly even top of the list.
Yeah, because you're combining like an amazingly impressive person with an amazingly impressive athlete.
Yeah.
And those are the people that I think like, they're like particularly worthy to be on this list.
Yeah.
Running style is absolutely amazing as well. It's like
beautiful
it's
to watch. Yeah.
Quite it looks effortless in the same way that like Federer looks a bit effortless playing tennis.
Yes, well, it's just like it's almost an art form. It's just so it's so lovely to watch. Yeah.
Oh, that's a new podcast. The best looking runners.
Oh, wow.
Just go through a list of those people. Yeah.
To be fair, Rick, you've got a very good effortless running style.
Yeah, it's not quite in the same. It's not quite in the same bracket. It might be that I'm not putting in huge amounts of effort. That might be that.
I've seen your heart rate on Strava.
If you just went to the gym a bit more, you'd basically be Usain Bolt.
Yeah. It's the only thing holding me back.
Yeah.
Ben, you are
Right. From renowned athletes to absolutely not an athlete.
Okay.
And I think that, so I'm talking about Johnny Ive, who is the designer of the iPhone, right? And obviously that's the global significance of the iPhone is undeniable. It's just absolutely the device that that you run into when when the person's looking at their phone and you run into them. That's what they're looking at. So so it's undeniable the impact that the device has had, but running particularly. Things like Strava, we've just talked about, probably wouldn't exist in the way that it does, because that is, apps, and the development of apps became from that sort of platform, and the way that people consume media, social media, the news, and then sharing activities, sharing things, and just generally the iPhone in its global significance and the significance it's had on running in technological advances, kind of feel like that's he's in there.
Yeah.
From that sort of like created this bit of tech which
revolutionised a lot of things, including
changed the world undeniably, but the impact it's had in running, it's hard to argue if it's more significant than other sports. But I would certainly say that
I think it might be, because I think you can take it with you. So if
tracking.
You've got your coach
tennis,
telling you what to do, whatever app you use, whether it's a personal coach or Nike Run Club or whatever it is you use. You've got your coach telling you what to do. You've got your tracker, Strava, whatever, tracking you as you do it. You've got your music or your podcasts that you're listening to motivate you or while you're doing it.
Selfie.
And then you've got your social media app so that you can take your sweaty selfie, because obviously you have to do that afterwards. But it's all in one, isn't it? That's the thing.
Yeah.
And connecting devices to it.
Heart rate monitors.
It is a personal training diary that goes beyond the measure of absolutely anything before. And I think that's what is so significant. Now, obviously there are, in this existence, Android phones all have the same apps. Everything is, comparative. You can watches are up there and blah blah blah. But the iPhone was the one that kickstarted where we're at now. So that's why.
Yeah, and I think it's a portability, isn't it? It's so portable that you can put it on your arm, or you can put it in your pocket, whatever. You can come with you on.
It does also remind me of the greatest running product ever made. Rest in peace, the iPod Shuffle.
Oh man, I've still got one. I've still got
one. So have I.
It still works, and I was using it the other day.
Postage stamp size, isn't
it?
Yeah.
And that was the best.
Why can't they bring that back?
I reckon trying to get one second hand online. I bet there's a real runner's market.
I bet they cost
ramping it up. Like you're always competing with Marathon Man. 200. He's paying a couple of grand for it.
Well, if it's a couple of grand, I've got one. So
get on there.
God, I had to. I mean, did we all at some point put one through the washing machine, or was that just me?
I have thankfully not done that. But
I did that. Yeah.
Well, there we go. Yeah. So a non-athlete, but a big influence.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Oh, it's a final round now.
Oh, why don't you go?
No, okay. Muck up the order.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I've got a previous guest to thank for this one, because Katie Holmes came on. Not that one. She's a running historian and a friend of yours, Kate, I think. And she talked about 5 women that changed running. And I hadn't heard too much about this person, but she said Tegla LaRoupe was someone who she wanted to be in there. And for anyone who doesn't know who Tegla is, it's 2-time New York City marathon winner, former marathon world record holder, multiple half marathon world champ. But why she is a game changer, I think, is she set up the Tegla LaRoupe Peace Foundation, which was designed to help create peace through sports, mostly focusing on East Africa and Kenya, where she's from. And then more recently, she was instrumental in establishing the Refugee Olympic team, which first competed in Rio in 2016.
There's a really good feature on that in Runner's World.
Brilliantly written. Yeah, I can't even did it. Awarded United Nations Person of the Year in 2016 as well.
That's a big award, isn't it?
Pretty big, isn't it? And I think about using running as a platform for good.
Yeah,
she has to be high up there.
Yeah,
and would probably be better known if she was a white man. But I think that's
That's the
that's a
reality.
world we're living in. But I
Yeah.
think her achievement shouldn't be underestimated. It's
100%.
amazing.
Yeah.
It's a good one. Good.
Yeah.
And on a human level, that when I did write that feature about the athlete refugee team, the athletes from it that I spoke to, I mean, the transformational effect of their lives.
Yeah, right.
Talking about people who, not only is it hard for them to run, they literally have nothing and they can't go anywhere because they don't have a passport.
Yeah.
So even just things like you could be the most phenomenally talented runner. A lot. I spoke to quite a few people from Sudan. You living in a refugee camp. Okay, so if someone gives you some trainers, you could run, but you can't compete because you don't have a passport. So you can't go anywhere. So
Yeah.
they could, you could be a 2:05 marathoner and not be able to compete anywhere because you couldn't have a passport. And so the mechanisms that she's set up through that to enable people to do that, not just to compete in the Olympics, but to kind of get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
it's
make sure that talent's not wasted. which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
just, like,
I mean,
really
that's
sad.
life changing on a.
Amazing, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and once they're able to compete places, the money earned from prize funds will be just absolutely like
And the inspiration,
Yeah.
if you're
change communities.
inspiring
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
to that,
Yeah.
it's so inspiring.
Yeah. That's a good one. God, there are all these people doing good stuff.
I know, yeah.
Yeah.
Look at us.
Right, Jane, up you in.
Okay, so in a similar vein to amazing athletes doing amazing things. Sophie Power, who I'm sure everybody's heard of, is my third. So she's a GB ultra runner, campaigner, mother of three, who works tirelessly to make racing and running equitable for women. So as most listeners have probably seen, she was photographed during the 2018 UTMB breastfeeding her 3-month-old baby. And that photo went viral. It went all over social media. And one of the reasons that Sophie chose to do that race was because the UTMB didn't allow her to defer her place due to pregnancy, and she'd already lost her place a few years before, so she decided to run it, which was incredible because it's just a ridiculously hard race by the looks of it.
Yeah.
And I think afterwards several race directors contacted her and said they were actually really embarrassed that they'd not thought about their pregnancy policy before, because it wasn't just UTMB, other races didn't allow pregnancy deferrals. So this year she set up She Races, which is a campaign for equality in racing and making racing more inclusive for women. And as a result of her work and that of other campaigners as well, UTMB, London and Boston have all changed their pregnancy policies now, which is amazing. And She Races goes beyond that as well. It's not just about the pregnancy policies, it's about making races a more positive experience for women and increasing representation, all of those things. So she's amazing, and she's just a badass as well because she's just this incredible ultra runner as well.
I think the impact of that picture was just
I was going to say,
unreal.
Photos, it's a different podcast, but photos that change running.
Yeah.
It's in there, isn't it? You think
absolutely.
Catherine Switzer, the Jock Semple picture,
Yeah.
maybe the Black Power salutes. I mean, there are lots, but that's in there.
Yeah, it's changed things, and I think it's made women realise that they can do anything. I think that's the message that Sophie wants to share.
Yeah.
These, because I think trail racing and ultra racing is it is marketed at you only look at the photographs on the race website. It's marketed at kind of fit looking white men, and she's like it's for women can do this as well, and we need to increase representation so they feel they're able to and experience the amazing benefits of it. So
Yeah, so right about the marketing. It's so much of it is about it's kind of explicitly marketed at kind of slightly testosterone fueled kind of. It's all kind of suffer fest and tough it out and all that kind of thing. The language is so kind of macho kind of cliche, isn't it?
Yeah.
And while none of those words are specifically only applied to men, it does.
It's off-putting, isn't it?
It is off-putting to people.
And the race cut-off times as well, makes it even more inaccessible. And it's things she campaigns for is making sure there's toilet provisions, making sure there's sanitary products in race toilets, and in race villages, making sure the race t-shirts are they're branded as for
Like
men and
unisex,
women, but
but
they're
yeah.
massive. They don't fit.
Unisex just means men.
Yeah.
So, let's be honest. Yeah.
So she's drawing attention to all these things that you actually begin to question and go, no, it is, very much marketed at men. So she's doing amazing things.
I think she was instrumental in getting the London Marathon to change their pregnancy policy. I think she was a big voice in.
Yeah,
she
certainly.
was.
Them,
Yeah, and I think definitely a lot of that is the work of She
Yeah.
Races and her campaign. So
Right. Kate, what's your last one?
Well, that kind of ties in quite well with that, because my one is definitely not a household name, but Georgie Brunvels is she's a really good runner, but is also more importantly, there's a sports scientist, and I chose her because I think she kind of represents a new shift, which kind of ties in a bit with what Sophie Power's doing, in that she's her work, along with other sports scientists, is finally addressing the kind of the gap of knowledge where for most of sports science's history, it's been all tests and trials and so on have basically been conducted on young white men.
Yeah, you realise that when you start researching articles, actually,
It's
a
all
lot
male
of the
studies.
studies are
It's all male.
On 100 male runners, you're like, what?
Exactly. And women are not just smaller or slightly smaller men. They they have different physiologies, different needs, different kind of stresses. We saw that fairly recently. There was a thing that came out in the context of football or rugby, I think, where like women are more likely to get ACL injuries.
Okay,
I think.
yeah.
And that's just an example of like this. That shouldn't be news. That should be something that we've known about for 50 years.
Yeah.
But so what she's doing is kind of addressing some of this, and specifically she designed with another sports scientist. She designed this app called Fitter Woman. Which is basically about exercise around your menstrual cycle. And what's great about it is it's not a sort of negative, you might feel, rubbish or whatever, so don't worry, etc. It's a useful, practical tool that explains why you might feel slightly stronger at certain points, or, this would be a really good time to maximize your strength training, or this is more your endurance thing. And it has like really practical tips like that. It's got some nutrition advice, again, not kind of faddy diet stuff, but just like, at this time of the month, you might really benefit from some extra kind of anti-inflammatory food. So why not try adding a bit of this or whatever? And it's a great app, which I seriously recommend to all female runners. But it's just I think she's kind of an emblem of this kind of change, which I hope is snowballing.
Yeah, and you've got a lot more athletes talking about it now and raising awareness, like Dina Asher-Smith, Ailish McColgan, and it is interesting when you start digging into it, because I interviewed Irene McGregor a few weeks ago, and she was talking about making sure you're eating particular foods at certain times of the month and how it affects you. And once you understand the way that your body is behaving and like the way you feel, it kind of all makes sense. And you're like, why didn't I know this before? It's crazy.
Yeah, it's very much kind of knowledge is power, isn't it? Because it's like, it's not, no one's suggesting you can change it, but just understanding can be such a kind of huge, sometimes it's a relief, okay,
that explains
that's
why I felt terrible on that run.
Exactly, yeah.
I think Jess Ennis-Hill might have done a similar app as well.
Yeah, she has, because she started with her kind of women's specific training, and that's definitely moved into that. And then there are lots of people raising awareness around it, doing things around it, as which is great. So hopefully it's kind of really going to change.
Yeah.
More studies on women as well.
Yeah. And it's not just the menstrual cycle as well, as the ACL thing shows. There's other things that women are more likely to get, there's certain kind of injuries that are more susceptible to than men, and vice versa, of course. So it's just important to understand these things.
Yeah, and to celebrate her for being a trailblazer in that area.
Yeah.
Right, one more, I think. Guy who made the PlayStation.
The guy who... I really have. Mine so far have been like really just odd. No, it's not strong. No, I've gone for Charlie Dark.
Great, yeah.
Who founder of Run Dem Crew. And Charlie, in his own words, is a disruptor. And that was kind of his whole... what he wanted to do with running. He felt like he didn't have a place in running, and he wanted to create a space for himself and for a young black people, particularly in London in general and now globally, sort of separate away from traditional running club, or what was the perceived image of a traditional running club and the experience of a traditional running club, and have something different that resonated more with particularly non-white urban city-based people. Charlie is my other one, and just the significance of not only Run Dem Crew, and obviously the growth that it had and the global significance of it, but just like the knock-on effect of what he did and the impact it's had for other groups that have like come out of people who went to Rundem have set up like
Track Mafia
there's a swim version, isn't there? Swim
Dem.
Crew?
You've got, as you say, Track Mafia, Tyler Williams Green, who set up the Outrunners, which is a charity now which works directly with young kids in Hackney. Like, he went to Rundem West. So, and Matilda Iguri Cooper, she Fly Girl Collective.
Yeah,
she was part of Rundem. So you've got all
it's
of
like become a model for
exactly, and it's not just I'm talking. They're more actually just the urban crew. The significance of like globally. Is it Run the Bridges in New York? There's one.
Black Roses as well.
And then there's like the Paris version. There's urban city-based running crew collective idea, which still now exists in is a flourishing part of running. Kind of stems all the way back to Rundem.
He's to thank for a lot of that, definitely. You think like running has become cooler, hasn't it?
I was going to say, it's just, let's face it, it's just cooler though.
Running has become cooler. You look at like the 1993 magazine, as charming as it is, but you realise that running was quite a niche thing back then. It was quite a serious thing. And in terms of making running like cooler, a bit more fashionable, which is where it is now, and kind of blending
You're
with
forgetting that was fashionable.
Maybe it was. Maybe
you just don't remember.
But he deserves huge credit for that.
Yeah.
Oh, and also the time with music and like just actually building more of a culture for running.
Yes.
By bringing in people and bringing the attributes of their cultures into it. And that's what has really, I think, the impact of it. And like you see like mile 21 now at the marathon and stuff, like where it's the random
party time.
It's a very good cheer section.
The cheer zones have just made the atmosphere at London is incredible, but it's just added more dynamic to it. It's and that impact is now felt. Other cheer stations exist at other races because of perhaps someone going, "Hey, have you seen what they did? Oh, we should. That's a good thing to do." So
I feel like it was kind of also like one of the things that started celebrating just running as running. You don't have to be a performance athlete. You don't have to. Obviously, like traditional running clubs have been maybe a bit more kind of focused towards getting faster or whatever. And I feel like they just sort of celebrated people who like running.
Let's just make it inclusive.
Before we recorded this, it pops up on Instagram, and he put up a post about how he'd just done it. It was looking back on his first 10K, and he'd gone into a shop to buy something to celebrate, and there was an athlete, or the person working in the running shop was like sub-elite or something, and had kind of mocked him for his time. And it was a trigger point for him to go, I want to do something more significant where time is not the thing we're after. I want to make this way more about running for its benefits,
lifestyle,
collective. I want to, and that's it. And it's really like that's now such an important part of like why people get together.
It's much more welcoming and inclusive and like non-elitist. I think Charlie's done so much for representation. I remember reading an interview with him, and also Sabrina Pace Humphries has said the same thing, like you can't be what you can't see. And he's been like super making sure again that black people are represented in race imagery, that black people are made to feel that they are welcomed at these races and it's a friendly environment. He's done so much for the sport in recent years.
So there we go.
So we've obviously missed loads of people out. Again, if people are listening and want to tell us who we missed out, let us know. podcast@runnersworld.co.uk. Great episode, loved it.
But
it's been fun.
Most importantly, people should just pick up the magazine.
Pick up the September issue of the magazine where there's 30 of these people. We go into huge detail, and there's lovely pictures as well. So.
And confusingly, the September issue of the magazine is out in August.
Yeah, we like to do that.
We're so ahead of the game. We're actually a month ahead of the game.
So when we say don't wait till September, go to the shop at the start of August. Then you'll find
Get yourself
I do like saying September issue though, because it does make me like imagine that we're
like Vogue.
Basically are.
Yeah, exactly. It's not. It's definitely not that.
Yeah.
Well, Kate and Jen, thank you for joining us.
No, thanks for having us.
Special Game Changer episode. Yeah, it was really good. We'll have to do more of these round table things, or square table indeed.
It's a square table. Yeah, exactly.